Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is David Watkins. I'm with Up in Farms. I have the pleasure and privilege of being here today with Mr. Walter Jackson. Mr. Jackson is a farmer up in Holmes County, Mississippi, and we are delighted to have you here today to talk with us about your farm.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Now, I understand that you have a long history of farming. Is that correct?
Well, been farming for about 30 years, 35 years now. Not a long history of farming, but grew up on a farm. Grew up on a plantation, basically. Agriculture is all I know. Been farming. I guess I've been in agriculture since I was 9, basically working consistently from 9 to present, basically.
Wow. Where was that farm that you grew up on? Where was that located?
So I grew up on a plantation in Ruleville, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. My parents were tenant farmers. Actually, they lived on a place, and we worked there for a living. They worked for a living, basically, and got a chance to move away when I was about 12 years old to we call it moving to town, moving to the residential area, and even then. What was popular in the Delta was for young people to chop cotton in the summer. So I chopped cotton or sprayed cotton. I had different agricultural jobs every summer until I graduated. And I went to Alcorn, of course, and majored in agriculture and worked there on various programs that the university had that I could do. Summer work, student work, basically there on the farm there at Alcorn. So got a chance to work there, and then graduated from college. And first job was an assistant county agent in Bolivar County, Cleveland, Mississippi. So I've been around agriculture all of my life.
Yeah, I'd say you have. Now, when you were young, like 9, were you actually working on the farm?
Working on a farm.
You work on a farm.
So at that time in the Delta, if you were old enough and disciplined enough to, we call it carry a row, basically to chop cotton and to carry a row to keep up in terms of the labor, then you were allowed to work. You could spend a day. And I had big brothers that were chopping cotton in the same field. My dad was one of the overseers. So gave me a chance to get out and carry my own row, so to speak, earn my own money. And so we were able to provide, some school clothes, we called them back then. Clothes that we, buy our own clothes for school, and a little odds, baseball gloves and things that we needed to take some of the burden off of our parents, because we worked in the fields in the daytime and played Little League baseball, in the evening. So it gave us a chance to, buy baseball gloves and caps and what have you, things like that. So it was fun then, even though it was work. But I think it was important in my development, in my work ethics, to be able to have some pride in what we were doing, to earn money. My parents let us keep what we earned, and
that's great.
That was good for on their behalf.
Was that common?
Not, I would say 50-50. A lot of parents would take most of the children's money and just manage it for them. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say they take it and use it for household bills and things like that, but they would take it and manage it for the children. A 9-year-old with $100, it takes some responsibility to manage that. And we lived in an area where, if you couldn't drive, you wasn't going to town. So I suspect that when we went to town to spend the money, we were supervised, in terms of what we were doing with it. But our parents allowed us to keep what we earned, and we remember saving and you count it every day, but we remember saving, and it creates some habits that I think that last a lifetime in terms of the value of saving, the value of spending wisely, and also the value of earning your own keep, so to speak.
Now, when you see it coming in and going out, you might not want to have it go out quite as much.
Correct.
Maybe I'll hold off on that.
That's definitely right.
Yeah. So, do you think that those times help you understand how to carry a row yourself, or was that something that you kind of had and you were kind of selected by your parents to work in the field to take on that responsibility because you had that within you already?
Well, I think some of both. I think that some of that was already in me because of the development that my parents had set forth in us. You know, I come from a family of 10 siblings.
Wow.
10 of us in all, not 9 siblings, 10 of us in all. And so, and I am number 9 of that group.
You're almost the baby.
Correct. So that the older ones in turn would help raise the younger ones, you know. And something about watching your older siblings perform, and my dad was important in my life, so watching him perform, I wanted to mimic what I saw him do. And
Right.
he was a supervisor, one of the people who were in the field to make sure that the ones that were out working would be working, you know, and not playing around or whatever. So I wanted to follow his footsteps, basically, do what I see him doing. And the opportunity came one day that I could get a chance to go. And the first couple of times I was turned down by the person who was taking the people to the field, basically. And then eventually I got a chance to go. And here's my chance to prove that I could carry my rope, so to speak. And
Gotcha.
I was successful. I did it and felt good about it. And from then on, you know, it's been a snowball effect. You know, every day I got better, you know, at it. I never longed to go home, so to speak, while we were out there, because in the community, your friends were also in the field. You know, they were also working. The people that you go to school with, the people you interact with every day, they were in the field at the same time. So we had a chance to you know, be together all day, talk about whatever it was that kids talked about, and bragged about our athletic abilities, and chop cotton. You know, a few days that I may have missed going out there. It was a lonesome day because no one was left in the community, and so you know, I always wanted to go and work, go and be busy doing something. And today I'm the same way. You know, I can't hardly sit still for a extended period of time. You know, I thought that based upon my retirement, you know, I had this thing in my mind, I'm going to do nothing for a few months. And that didn't work.
That's a few minutes.
That didn't work. Right. I was pacing the floor and trying to figure out what I was going to do, and eventually just start to do other things. You know, start to get involved in some of the church work, or start getting involved in some other things so that my time could be spent doing some kind of work. Basically.
But you kind of get the hint when your family starts leaving little notices of jobs around and things like that on the table.
Project, right.
You know, I heard that they were looking for somebody to help up here,
Correct.
just to get you out of the house. Yeah,
That's it.
yeah. So I guess at some point you made that decision. You were thinking, well, you know, maybe I want to be a second baseman, you know, maybe I want to pursue that, you know, or maybe I want to, pursue farming. When did that really crystallize for you? And what led up to that? And or was this always really your dream?
Well, agriculture was always my dream. You know, I wanted to be a rice scientist, to be honest with you. In the Delta, they grew rice around our family house and in the community there and on the plantation. So I thought rice was a unique crop. It was an unusual crop. Water, flooded water. I was always fascinated by the flooding and the levees and how they were able to flood the waters and that type of thing. So there were like 3 men that were important, you know, in my life. My dad was one of them. Then I had an uncle that was named James, like my middle name is, and then my brother that went to Alcorn just ahead of me going there. So these three men were in agriculture and in various perspectives, you know. And so I got a chance to watch them and observe what they were doing, and I wanted to have some facet of it, but the idea of actually owning a farm was far fetched for me then, being a, you know, just a son of a tenant farmer. You know, we never owned any property as a family, and so that was far fetched. And as I was the extension agent, a county agent in Holmes County, a friend of mine was looking in the papers, and he saw some property up there that was being foreclosed on, and he told me about it. So that was my first farm. It was 60 acres and a house, and I bought that place and began to raise some cattle on it. Cattle, and had some pigs as well. We were raising cattle and hogs there on that place, and working with the farmers in Holmes County. One of the farmers who I had been assisting for some years in terms of working with him on his beef cattle farm learned that he was ill. So he came by the office and he made me an offer. He says, "Hey, you know, I know you like my place. You've said it every time you come out there. You're basically
You were helping him through
my extension job.
To your extension job. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And he says, I want you to own this place. I want to give you the opportunity to purchase it." And he says, you know, this is what you need to do. He says, you need to go to FSA and see if you can get a loan to buy the place. And I was elated, and I did that, you know, and I got the loan, and I began to. This was my time to own 250 acres now, from 60 acres. Then I'm a 250 acre place, and so it worked out.
So how important for you in that process was it to have somebody willing to show you the ropes, to show you how to do that, say this is the process that you want to go through?
Well, being an extension agent, the process was there, well, already in my scope of things in my mind. So the individual that sold me the place didn't really show me. He just was not going to take a simple "I can't afford that" as an answer, because that was my first reply. You know, man, I can't afford you know, this property. And he says, well, you know, you could qualify for a loan with FSA, so you should check that out. Now, that encouragement was important because it was what opened my eyes to the opportunities that were there for me. You know, even though I knew that, it just, in my mind, it was like, okay, it's not there for me, if that makes sense.
It does.
Right.
I find that really fascinating too, because I think there are a lot of other farmers who may be in that situation,
right,
who may think, "Mom, not for me." Right. You know, I see it, yeah, but not for me. Even if they understand it, they may not have the encouragement, you know, right, to or just that push, right, to go out and do it.
The fear of debt, you know, the fear of large debt, frightened many people, you know.
Right.
And at that time, it scared me. You know, here I am, young man. I had family, you know, and they talking about, you know, $250,000 or so, you know, and I'm thinking, man, I don't want to assume that kind of debt right now, and frightened by that, and almost missed my calling.
Wow, wow. So when you got the land, when you made the purchase, did you bring a name to it? Did you have a name for your farm, or was that something they evolved? What is it called now? How did that happen?
You know, today it's called Walter Jackson's Family Farm. It's an LLC today. Now, 5 years ago, that's the name that was given to the property by me and my family, basically. Now, before then, because I'm one of those people who like to be under the radar, don't like to brag or boast, it didn't really have a name. It was just my farm, basically. You could call it Walter Jackson's Farm, but it did not have a name, a brand at all. We just worked the land. Just had our heads down, trying to make ends meet, trying to pay the notes, trying to stay ahead, trying to stay in good standings, and that was the goal. At that time, I was working with USDA, and I was not able to manage the property to the potential that I could once I retired or whatever, because you have 8 to 5. You're limited in terms of what you can do. Holmes County is about 60 miles north of Jackson, so that's a 60-mile drive one way to get there and back. So you're not there every day, So in doing that, you had to scale back some. Had to scale back a good bit, but at the same time, understanding the goal, the long-term goal, and working toward that in increments was a way to sustain the property, to pay the notes, and to wait until I retire so I could spend some more time on the place.
I think that also says a lot about character too. So not wanting to overstate or overpromote, recognizing that I not come out and say, hey, here I am, this is me, but it takes some work, it takes some effort to really put that in and make your dream a reality. And you understand the time and the commitment to do that, and say, it says to me that you have a vision of where you want to go and the kind of operation that you would have that you'd be proud of. And you knew that was going to take some time, and you didn't want to come out and brag about something that wasn't there yet.
Correct.
Yeah. I think that says a lot about character, and there are a lot of lessons for people to learn from that, about the kind of work and effort that goes into creating something.
Yes. Well, I try to be humble as possible, and that leads to, I guess, my behavior in that realm, because we were just out behind the trees getting the work done. Even today, my cattle are in the back fields. They're not up on the road on the major highway. We typically bale hay and do our hay work on the front side of the place, and keep the cattle toward the back, so that they're not visible, so that the things about how many cows do you have, and how many this kind of thing, I keep that back in the back, so that that's never part of a distraction for me. We can get into distractions in terms of trying to work for the public's eye. In other words, trying to have all your cattle fat. Have them at body condition scores of 7s, when 5s and 6s are what they really are. And where I find they work best, in that 5 and 6 category, than to have them fat, basically. You're gonna have to spend a good bit of money to get them that way, and you find yourself working for the public's eye than working for a profit, or working for the maximizing your potential on your farm that way. And I never want to be a person that had what they so-called front pasture cattle, basically. I want cattle that produce, that have a calf every year, that breed back in time, and that kind of thing. So that's the goals that I had for the cows. That's the demands that I put on them, and sometimes they're not fat and shiny all the time, particularly this time of year.
Well, let's talk about your cows. Okay. What is your relationship with your cows like?
Well, it's one of them things, kind of like a family. I know every one of them, and when you pull up on your place, without counting them, it's a sense that come over you that if one's missing, you know,
Really?
if number 36 is not there, I can feel it, you know, that she's not here, you know. Well, she must be having a calf, she must be injured, let me go and find her. And then after I go through and double check, then 36 is not there. Now, I might not know it's 36, but I know that one's missing. And
Right.
so that's one of them things that comes over you, I guess it's just instinct. By being there with the cows, and, you know, a lot of times, like a lot of cattlemen, I believe, sometimes we're not actually doing the work. We just pull up out where our cattle are grazing and stop the truck and just sit there for hours, just looking at the cattle, watching their behavior, seeing what they're eating, watching the calves' behavior, you know, admiring the calves for their quality and this type of things, thinking about replacing bulls because of some genetic something that you see in your cattle that you want to change, thinking about performance in terms of, okay, this calf is 3 months old, she should be weighing this, and she looked like she's weighing that, or look like he is excelling in that way. This cow's really doing a good job. You know, you're looking at feet and eyes and udders and different parts of your cattle. All those things are instinctively important in terms of making sure these cattle are in a position to perform at their best. You know, so a lot of time is just observation.
Right.
It's observation
Right.
and understanding that. And when you do that, I think the instinct comes that, okay, somebody's missing. This cow's behavior is abnormal. She must be sick, or must be getting close to calving, or must be something is not right with her today, you know. And bearing a chance, okay, tomorrow I need to keep another eye on her. I need to keep watching her to see if she is, you know, injured or sick or anything like that.
That's amazing. You express such some sense of empathy and humanity about the cows that comes through that observation, through that closeness of them. Something you mentioned to Delaney earlier was that that I picked up on. You said that you could tell how much they enjoyed the fresh water more than the pond water.
Yes.
And that's something that you could like viscerally observe in them.
Oh yeah. So for some time, the only fresh water I had was in a corral, and I could literally catch my cattle by opening the gate, and they would run in the corral and fight for the water, you know, push out the way, because there wasn't a big trough in the corral, but they would push, and I could catch them that way by just opening the corral door, because they knew where the water was.
Mm-hmm.
They knew it was there, and they would go for it, and they would pull their calves in there right with them. You know, the calves would stand back for a while. Mommy runs in and starts drinking, and eventually the calf come in, and I can catch the calf. You know, if I need to do that. So I know they love the fresh water from that. You know, and then if you give them the choice between the fresh water and the pond, they're going to choose the fresh water. They're not going to go and drink pond water. They're going to choose the fresh water if they had free choice.
That's right.
And
And then generally that means a well. Is that correct?
Well,
or not necessarily?
well, not necessarily.
Okay.
Where I am, I'm able to use community watering system. Now we have to have these backflow valves on our watering system so that we don't contaminate the community water.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm able to use that. In some remote areas, though, wells are important, and farmers are able to install wells through USDA, able to install wells, and wells that don't have to be permitted, so they're about less than 5 inches. You know, they can install those wells and water their livestock, and also you know, irrigate vegetable crops, or some small farm crops if they wanted to. But the wells are they're there for those that need it. I just have not needed it at this point. And the backside of the place is not watered. There's no pipeline going back to the backside of my farm, and eventually that may become something that I may be interested in. But right now we're just hay in that bottom in the back. It's a flat area back there that really productive in terms of hay, and so we use it to make quality hay for the winter.
Understood.
Speaking
right.
of hay, we're trying to. I don't know if in central Mississippi or in Holmes County we're ever going to be able to do without hay entirely, but we're trying to minimize the days that we're feeding hay by planting winter annuals, planting clovers, trying to extend the grazing season on both ends so that we can minimize the amount of stored feed that we feed them, because that is the most expensive thing that we do on a beef cattle operation is putting up hay and feeding it. You're taking something that the cattle would naturally graze, you're having to store it. Takes a barn to store to keep it in good quality, and then you have to take it back out there and give it to them. And it in itself, you need to sacrifice a lot. You need a lot that you can feed it, because in the winter here we have rain, and bogging around the hay, rings and that kind of type of thing gets to be a problem, gets to be an issue, because if you're concerned about soil health and soil quality, that can't be good for your soils, the bogging. Now,
right.
There are heavy use area protection areas that are cost shared, not necessarily cost shared, but are worked on by the USDA, by NRCS.
Do equip or something like that.
To equip or some of the conservation practice. That is a conservation practice that's out there and available. I've not taken advantage of that just yet, just for the simple fact that we've been able to unroll the hay out and get the cattle to grazing it, do other things other than just feeding in the rings when we have the time to do that. We still feed hay in rings, and we still unroll some out when the time comes. This depends on what the weather is doing, depends on the time that I have out there on the place to do it. If it's I got something to do, I'm gonna go and put out a couple of rings, bales of hay, and go, then that happens. If I have some time, I can cut the twine off the hay, I can unroll it down a hill or down a slope, and then the cattle seem to gather around that, and you don't have all that trumping and bogging like you would around a hay ring. So those are some things that I juggle in terms of time and in terms of what that hay looks like. Sometimes it's not put up real tight, and so the bale gets kind of squished in the stack, and so it don't roll very easy, and then I'm not able to get it moving. So some they will have to just eat it from the ring then. So
okay.
It kind of depends on the day and what's going on in the schedule.
Now, is it accurate or not to assume that if you could replace hay with grasses, that you would?
Oh, definitely. I would definitely rather for the cattle to graze it themselves than me to have to harvest it and then store it and then take it back and feed it to them.
And the grasses have some other advantages in terms of mitigating erosion and compaction.
Yes. Oh, definitely. The winter annuals, in a pasture setting, if forages are kept at a decent height, at a 4-inch height or something like that, if they are kept at the recommended height, then the stubble itself will help mitigate some erosion. But it don't help the carbon footprint a lot, because it's not a green material there. You have a live root in the soil, that's important, but you don't have the green material there. And so grasses definitely going to help with the erosion in it, but the main thing that they do is provide a quality forage for livestock during a time when they desperately need it. Ryegrass can be 20% protein sometimes if you fertilize and handle correctly. It could be even higher than that. So that's a C3 grass, or a grass that grows in the cool season grass. It's way far superior in quality than our summer grasses that we can grow here in Mississippi, which is typically Bermuda grass and Bahia grass. Up north, they can grow some fescue to some extent, but C3s, fescue is a C3, but C3 grasses are cool season grasses. Let me call them cool season grasses for the commonality of you. Cool season grasses are superior in quality. So we're going to get a healthier cow that's calving in the spring, really in the winter time. January is, we call it spring calving, but they're calving January and February. So they're calving in that period of time, and by the time that they have that calf is 45 days old, ready to graze himself, then we have some superior grass that the cow and the calf can graze. And we're able to get them to be ready to breed back, in April. I'll be ready to breed back on time by the time, we're ready. So you can shorten your breeding season. It all works together if you have green forages there, and it limits the concentrated feed that you have to feed them. That's an expensive deal, trying to feed out of a bag, feeding concentrates, corn byproducts, or some of the other feeds that are out there available. No matter what it is, if it's in a bag, it's expensive. It's expensive to feed, and the cow's gut is made to digest forages,
right,
and not necessarily starches. And so, it's important to know that, and to try to balance that. Now, there comes a time, January in Mississippi, we're going to have to feed cattle. Our cool season is not going to grow very fast in central Mississippi, in Lexington, Mississippi. It's still kind of cold.
It get 7-8 degrees colder up in Holmes County than it can down here in Hines. That's just right down the road, but it's definitely a different temperature.
So we don't get the growth that you would get in South Mississippi, so to speak. So January, part of the first part of February, we're going to be feeding, but there about the 15th of February, sun comes out, we start getting those intermittent warm days, and it's a blessing to have some ryegrass for your cattle that all have fresh calves by now, and they needed some nutrition. They're needing it bad at that time. That's the highest demand on that cow's life, is right there, and it's good to have something to put in front of them so they can graze through it, rather than having to go out there and feed it to them.
I'm sure. Now, you were talking a minute ago about carbon footprint. Now, how important is the idea of, explain what you mean by this, and how important is that to you and your farming and your overall philosophy of what you want to do?
Okay. So we see it in my lifetime. I could see the effects of this global warming process. Growing up, we used to have some cold winters. There would be rainstorms and an occasional tornado here and there, in Mississippi. It was balanced out. But now we have severe events. When it rains, it really rains.
It really rains.
When it gets cold, it really gets cold. And it's you see the impacts. You see what's going on. And if you pay attention to the news, you're watching the Arctics warm up. You're watching the glaciers starting to thaw out. You're watching this whole country heat up, the whole world heat up, And so if you're conscious about that, then I feel that every person, every soul ought to want to do something to mitigate that. Right? So the opportunity for farmers is to keep something green on the soil, to keep the earth green, to sequester some of this carbon, then if we can do that, then I think that all farmers should strive to make this universe a better place for our offspring, because we have offspring, and we need to make it a better place for them. And so that is that is as important as the offspring to me, is to make sure that they have an opportunity to enjoy this world like I did, like I did. So yes, keeping reducing the carbon footprint is very important to me. I'm happy to see forests going in. A lot of people hate to see land retired and people plant trees, but I'm happy to see that going in rather than it just sitting there idle. Mm-hmm. Idle land that's growing up into incidental woodlands, idle land that's being just eroded, or land that, and it happens. I understand that, farmers pass on and no one's there to really take the land and keep it in production. I understand that. But it is my hope that programs come about that can take this land and put it into trees or conservation cover. And in this conservation cover, we have grasses that can, or brassicas, or different kind of forbs that can keep a greenness going on, keep a living root in the soil, keep the land healthy, so to speak, so that later on someone might purchase it, or someone else might put it to use to maximize, what that land capabilities are, or even if it's just in conservation cover. Now, that's a conservation practice. Mm-hmm. Conservation cover itself that's a conservation practice that farmers could take advantage of. It's just the lack of knowledge about all of the practices that are out there. Some of them, of course, are more attractive than others. The fencing, the strive grazing, the ones that people use all the time are definitely going to be attractive. Cover crops are coming on the scene, and really coming on the scene now, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because some years ago, cover crops was known about, but kind of unheard of for farmers actually implementing cover crops. But now, as you travel the row crop regions of the state, you see cover crops being planted and managed, and no detrimental effect to the next crop that's coming. They're able to get in and burn those cover crops down to no-till or minimum till, or the crop, plant the next crop and get along just fine. See good yields, and all these things go together in reducing that carbon footprint, and that's a happy, in my mind. That's when I see that, I'm happy to see that some conservation is taking place, and so that later on the polar bear got a place to live, basically. So sort of a TV scenario, but that's kind of the way I see it.
It sounds like you're also carrying forward a lot of what you learned growing up. Your observations of the land itself, yes, has been a constant in your life, and I think you're probably very much aware of the impact that changes in the overall environment are having, and the impact that will have on your cattle, but also on your kids and your kids' kids.
Yes.
Whether they take on your farm or not, they can still receive the benefits from that a generation, 2 generations, 3 generations down the line by the kinds of practices you're taking on, which are not just about, hey, I want to sell the fattest cow I can. I want to make the most money off of this, that I can, or I want to be able to show off this really more than anything. It sounds like you're very conscious of the inputs financially, the outputs financially, but also the conservation goals and the philosophy behind that, and really just being a really fantastic steward of the land.
Yes, money is important. Don't get me wrong, but there's a balance between making a profit and harming the environment. And I'm not going to consciously do anything to harm the environment because so many people do. And when you have failing septic systems going on here, and you have an occasional storm comes after a person has applied fertilizers or that type of thing, and when you fly over the Gulf of Mexico and you can see down what the water looks like, you can see these areas, then you have to be conscious of the incremental effects that happen from house to house or farm to farm on the environment. And I'm not going to harm the environment. If I can't help it, I'd rather do nothing than to harm the environment, because like you said, my kids are going to have to be here, and I want them to enjoy some lifestyle that they can go out and breathe, clean air like I have, or
Right.
they can go out and see green space, and enjoy the outdoors like I have growing up. So I want them to have at least that enjoyment in their lives.
Certainly. So one question I have for you is that either on a yearly basis, well, let's start off on a yearly basis. What are the biggest decisions when you sit down and you're looking at your farm and you're making your plan for the year? What are the biggest decisions that you have to make?
Well, there are a couple that comes to mind right off the bat, and one of them is how much money, how much input are we going to spend on the farm this year? So what I try to do is break my farm up. It's 250 acres, right? And so I try to break it up into 50-acre blocks in my mind, And so the lowering and the Memphis silk loam soils, the pH in that area is fairly low, 5.5 or somewhere in that area. So that land needs lime. It needs a soil amendment to build the pH up so that we can maximize the potential there. Okay. In haying the land as much as we do, we mine out some phosphate and potash on the property as well. So that has to be put back. Now, it costs money to do that, and I cannot afford to do 250 acres worth of it. So every year, my goal is to do 50 acres. And then just kind of rotate that around until I get back. So it's a 5-year cycle before I'm able to get back to the 50 acres.
To replenish everything.
To do that. So that's important. Now comes the next piece is that in the back of the place, there is a group of little spot of sweet gum trees that have started to grow in that area. And I want to clear those trees out. And so I have been adding to what I have done to the 50 acres to get a portion of those trees cleared out. And I'm, knock on wood, I am 1 year from having that area cleared up so I could utilize that land for grazing back in there. It's gently sloping land, so it's good land for grazing. It just was also productive for the sweet gum trees to
How many acres are we talking about over there?
About right now we've probably got about 3 acres left. Of that. But to have a dozer and backhoe in that area. Moving those trees can be expensive by the
Right.
by the hour. So to speak.
Absolutely.
So we having to take out some of that as well. So there's always some improvements that we're looking to do. So that is the one thing that resonates on my mind, is how much I'm going to be able to spend on that. Now, we all know that cattle prices have been really good the last year or a year and a half or so. So and seem to be getting better. Now, the next piece is do I keep replacement females, or do I sell them, And so that is the next decision that I have to make in my mind, because I can't replace them. I can't buy the kind of female that I want for the money that I'm having to sell the ones that I have for. Now, there's an argument that old wisdom, the wise farmers are going to tell you that, man, by the time you get a return on your investment, you're going to have 3 years involved in this calf. And that's true. That is very true. By the time she matures old enough to have a calf and breed back, you're gonna be beyond 36 months in that process. But I have more time, I hope, than I have money, and so I'm willing in some cases to make that decision to keep those females, because the place can, we could raise and comfortably graze 60 to 75 head on that place and still have some space for hay on there easily. But I have not made it there yet in terms of the number of females. I'm getting there, but I haven't made it there yet. And so that's a decision that I make in my mind. Am I going to keep these heifers, or am I going to go out and spend, $2,500 to $3,000 try to find replacements that don't know my place, that not familiar with the forages there, and that going to take some time for them to be acclimated to the place. And
wow, that's just amazing. Everything that goes into that.
Yes.
That decision.
Or they might bring some disease there that I don't have, so have pretty much a closed herd where I have not bought anything other than bulls into the property. And so I don't have a lot of disease issues, and I don't want to bring any, so I have to make that decision. That's a decision that's forefront on my mind, because the temptation to sell heifers now is greater than it has been since I've been in the cattle business, because these heifers can bring a fair amount of money now, just at the auction barn, let alone if you sold them to a private entity or anybody else. So that's another decision that we have to make, and then the place always needs improvement. Always, infrastructure needs, tractors, a barn. Are we going to invest into this or that to make life easier for me farming, and also to store hay in a place that we don't lose 30% of it. You can lose a fair amount of hay by storing it outside. Even though it don't look like it, even though they have these net wraps now that do a better job of saving the hay that you store outside, we still lose some on the bottom and some around the outside. And that outside rim around the hay is a lot of hay in that, so you lose a lot of hay that way. So it'll more than pay for itself to over some years to build a barn. And so those decisions have to be made. Whether or not we're going to do it this year, or we're going to wait down next year, or things like that. So,
So in that husbandry side of that, and the managing side of that, so you think about this up front. Do you write these things down? Do you have a plan for it? does it evolve through the year, or do you think about, well, I know that in April I need to spend this amount of money, so I have to make sure I have access to that, or that in June I've got this going out, but then I'll be selling at these points, so this amount will come in. How much do you actively think through and plan that part out?
Daily, daily. When I say daily, I know that there are certain things you're going to do in every month of the year. They're just standard things that we do in every month of the year. We know that when it's starting to warm up and the cattle are about to start grazing, we know that we're going to have a fly issue. We already know that. And so we know that we're going to have to put some tax in those ears. We know we have to do something to reduce the impact of the flies on the cows. We know that. So that's just an example. We know that twice a year we need to go in there and take care of external and internal parasites. We know that we're going to do that, and we know about when we need to do it. We need to do it right after the first freeze. We know we need to do that in order to clean those cattle up. Basically for the winter feeding. And so those type of things we know, but it's a daily thought that your mind is always just calculating or just going over things that you're gonna do like this spring. I need to, in my mind, I'm thinking right now as we're talking that we need to breed these heifers, earlier than we do the cows, and how and what that's going to look like and what pasture they're going to be in. And, how am I going to get the bull to this pasture without passing them through the pasture where the cows are? How am I going to keep them over there and not have the bull nose to nose or fence line to fence line with cows that are calved, and some of them are already cycling back, by the time he's, mating the heifers. So that's going through my mind as we speak right now is the process. How am I going to get this done, and what time am I going to juggle my day-to-day life in Jackson with my farm life in Lexington? How am I going to do this, and those type of things. So we think about that. I'm already thinking about scheduling the guy with the dozer to come in and take out the remaining sweet gum trees. I have a fence line in the back and front that need to be managed better because of some trees and some brush and thorn bushes and things that have grown up in there. And so I'm thinking about when am I going to be able to juggle that, all these different things. And like you said, I'm also thinking about the time that I got to sell these steers. I'm going to sell these steers. I kept some steers over. They are pretty good size on them right now. They're big steers. So when am I going to push these steers to the market? And you watch the market, and the market is still moving upward, and you don't know exactly when to pull the trigger or when you're going to have time to get them up and pull the trigger.
Where is your market? But you have one market, you have a few. Where do you sell?
So I have a couple of markets right now, and I'm moving toward another market. So I work with a group of farmers, and what we're trying to do is to breed our cattle the same time to similar genetics, so that we can put together a truckload of steers and directly sell those steers to feedlots. Right. So that's our goal at some point. We have not thought a lot about retained ownership yet, but we are thinking about or putting in place right now similar genetics and breeding seasons so that we could sell these calves at the same time. So that's where we're going. Now, where are we right now is that with 38 mama cows right now, what we're doing is we're taking our cattle to the sale barn, and selling them. There is a person there in the county that will buy those cattle just without going through the sale barn arena. Just a person that buys the cattle. He has a buying station. You take the cattle there. They weigh them. You write you a check. That's good. That's good for some people.
I need to know what the sell barn is.
But the competitive buying to sell bonds that have reputations.
Can you explain this to us?
Sell barn is?
Yeah, please.
Okay,
I think that there's going to be people out here
Sure.
that have, that would be wonderful if you could walk us through that.
So sale barn is a common name for livestock auction. So there are areas in the state that have livestock auctions. One of the biggest ones in Mississippi is Tadlock in Forest, Mississippi. There's another one down in Hattiesburg. They have buying stations in Canton and Bay Springs that are connected to the Tadlock one. There was one at Grenada, one at Kosciuszko. These are ones that were in striking distance for me in Lexington. Now Hattiesburg is a ways away. So there are auctions where you have buyers come in and competitively bid on your cattle as they come in a ring, basically. So they're looking at quality. They're looking at what their buying needs are for that day. They are looking for different things that make them bid higher or lower on your cattle. Quality, grade, is part of it. And when I say grade, they're number 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s. So you have cattle with decent frame, with the right kind of flesh, and conformation is good. Cattle that appear to be healthy. Those buyers are looking for those type, cattle. So you're going to get a premium on those cattle because you're going to have competitive bidding going, on there. So the disadvantage, if I can call it a disadvantage, is that you have to pay a commission for that entity, the auction to a sale barn to sell those cattle. So you pay some commission there. Now, a person that buys the cattle from a buying station, there's no commission involved. He just buys the cattle. The commission is probably hid behind
on their markup, whatever they're going to do. Right.
Probably hid behind that, but there's no commission. Now, for a small farmer, that buying station near them is very attractive because you have to have a truck, a powerful truck and a trailer and those type of things to haul cattle to a certain distance. Now, auction bonds do offer a service. They'll come pick them up. They'll do, it's a lot of things they do to get those cattle in, so they do have that. That's helpful. But to have one that you can, load up 2 or 3 steers and take it to a close location, drop it off, is to the advantage of some small farmers. The ones who don't have the infrastructure in place to get those cattle somewhere else, or don't have enough cattle to make a trip worthy of the auction bond to come pick them up. They don't like to come pick up 2 or 3 calves. But in a lot of cases on small farms, it may be 2 or 3 calves that's needed to pay tuition for a child that's in college, to finish the tuition for a child that's in college. It may be 2 or 3 calves that needed to put out a financial fire somewhere in their lives. So, that's important. And you have to believe that, and you have to understand that that's very important when it comes to small farmers, because a lot of times they're not raising cattle to sell groups, bunches at a time. They are raising cattle to sustain or to supplement a city job or a town job that they have. And so that's a piece that's important. So to answer your question, I have sold some most of them to the auction, because even though I pay a commission, I I'm more comfortable with the competitive bidding, because if you want to see it on your phone, video, they have these sales live, Facebook Live. You can watch the cattle sale,
Wow.
or if you want to go there in person, you could see what's going on. You got a fair price for your cattle. And when it's competitive bidding, you don't walk away feeling, man, I could have got more. When you take them to the buying stations, then they give you a good price, because prices are good. Prices are good. So comparatively to what we have made, they're good. But you just don't know how much better it could have been.
Right.
And then,
Is it all a numbers game or a pounds game, or is some of that dependent upon relationships and reputation and things that you can cultivate?
well, it's a pounds game. You're getting paid by the pound, but they're going to buy quality cattle. So it's a pounds game. It's a person that has managed their herd health, to keep the cattle healthy, to keep the cattle looking like they're going to perform for a feedlot. Ultimately, these cattle are going to go to a feedlot, and the less input that the feedlot are the people who are going to manage these cattle beyond the producer. The producer sells a 500-pound calf basically to the 400 to 500-pound calf to the auction barn. Then that calf is going to go somewhere to a person that's going to feed it on grass for another 300 or 400 pounds, right? Then that calf is going to go to a feedlot and be finished for consumption. Now, if that calf has not been castrated, then that's a less that the producer is going to receive for that calf, because that's a process or risk that the next person who buys it is going to have to take, because he's going to have to castrate a calf that's 400 or 500 pounds, and to the advantage of the calf and to the farmer, and just production advantage is that we want to castrate those calves as early as possible in their lives, so that you don't have all that stress on the calf and that type of thing. So no person really wants to buy a calf in the summer, in the heat of the year in Mississippi, with the flies and the problems that we have, castrate it, and then risk performance. The calf probably not going to die, but you're going to risk some performance. They're going to give up a good bit of performance with that calf healing up there. So no person want to buy that. So it's going to be some adjustments made based upon that. If a buyer looking at a group of calves come in and they obvious that these calves have parasite loads, then they're gonna say, okay, we got to treat these cattle. We got to. So some adjustments have to be made for them buying a set of calves that the homework was not done by the farmer, on the front side. So the farmer suffers a loss because the cattle are not healthy.
So do they ask for records sometimes, inoculation records, other things like that?
Not so to speak, but if you take a group of cattle to the auction and you inform the people at the auction that these cattle have 2 rounds of shots, they are broke, they know how to eat out of a feeder, then the buyer, that's to his advantage, because he don't have to train them that, he don't have to give them those shots, see. But so that can be announced, and when that's announced during the auction, those cattle typically bring a premium, because
Gotcha.
That happens, And one thing that we find out, that if cattle got a tag in their ear, that means that a farm at least handled them cattle at least one time. See, so just sitting in the bleachers watching the sale, and when you see calves come through, and you see those calves come through with no tag, and you think this calf, first time it been caught was to come to this barn. Well, the buyer's thinking the same way, If he sees a calf come through with a tag in his ear, so this calf has been caught, at least they put a tag in his ear. He probably got dewormed, he probably got shots, probably got at least black leg, doing during his trip through the corral. At least the calf has been in the corral. See, so those things are little things that are important that add up, I think, to your final returns on your investment, so to speak. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you're doing your rotational grazing and you're moving the animals from one place to another and you're thinking about this, so how would you describe that? Is it more like, so I'm going to give you some options here, and is it more like being an air traffic controller, or is it more like being a sergeant in the military, or is it more like being a middle school teacher, or some combination? What would you say? It's more like.
Well, this is what you will find when doing prescribed grazing. And I'll give you this scenario first to think about. So in the wintertime, if you take a bag of feed and feed your cattle any grain, any concentrate, they love it. If it's a sweet molasses type feed, they absolutely love it. So when they hear your truck pull up, they know it's feeding time. And wherever they are going to get up and run to the gate and wait on you to come and feed them. Now, fresh forages are the same way. They absolutely love fresh forages. So when they hear your truck pull up, they're going to run to the gate and be ready to move into a first fresh paddock of forages. So you don't have to catch them. You don't have to call them in there or force them in there. They get used to a rotation. Mm-hmm. They get used to that. And when that gate is open, boy, they go in, their heads are down. They're gathering this fresh forages because they love it. Now, the management that comes into there is knowing when to move them, when they have grazed half of what you had out there for them to graze in a particular block. You know, I'm one of the graze half and leave half philosophy. So we want to graze half the forages and leave half the forages to regenerate the other forages.
Right.
So determining when that half is when the weather in a drought situation, you know, or when the weather is not like the textbook say it should be. You know, now I could say, okay, we're going to move them every 7 days. Now that sounds like a prescription for grazing, but the weather is going to dictate if that day is day 3 or that day is day 10, you know, because a drought situation, the pasture in front of you may not be ready when pasture behind you has been ready. So you have some decisions to make now. I need to allocate more forages. So I got to open 2 gates because now I got to let the cattle have a bigger place. You know, you got to have a contingency plan, so to speak, to in case things just don't go right. And we talked about global warming at first, and the possibilities and the times when there are major events, you know, droughts or floods or these type of things going on. So they affect the decision that we make on the prescribed grazing, on the rotational grazing. So last year we got into almost a contingency plan where we had to just open the gates and let them find what they could find right there toward August, September, and October when we really didn't have much forage out there, you know.
Oh.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to just your grazing whole plan becomes survival, you know, basically. We don't want to harm the grasses by letting them mow it down like a golf course, but at the same time, we need for them to have forages that are available. The plus to all that is during a time like that, a rotational system will help you, you will benefit from that. If they were just continuously grazing the whole place, then what you have is areas where they have grazed down to forages that's way less than an inch, because they're going to keep coming back to those areas because the regrowth is going to be tender and going to taste palatable, and they're going to want that more so they're going to want the overgrowth. So you can have these spots in your pasture that will eventually become bare spots, and then they will be replaced by weeds.
Wow.
Right.
So it sounds like one of the real tangible examples of the impact of climate change is that you have to do a lot more management of your animals in order to prevent them from eating up the entire field,
right,
eating up everything. It
right.
does require more management, more thinking through that.
Yes, we certainly praying that we don't have another summer like we had this past summer. We are feeling the impacts of that every day, and if you're just conscious of you traveling up and down the highway, I know you have seen semi truck loads of hay being moved up and down the road. And it seems like every year we see more and more of that happening, not because we have always been in the hay shipping business. That's not been the case, but because people run into drought situations in the late summer, and they absolutely have to have it. And so they having to haul it in and pay large amounts of money for that forage. And much of it is not tested. So you're just having to have some roughage to go through your cattle to get you through the hard time of the year, the winter periods of the year.
Wow. Is there anything that you can do in terms of irrigation over the long run to help offset that?
Well, there are some regions that benefit from irrigating, pastures. Irrigation is going to yield some quality forages. There's no doubt about that. Putting a pencil to it, irrigation on pasture traditionally have not paid. And when I say pay, you're going to lose money irrigating because of the prices that we used to get for the cattle. Now that cattle prices are getting better, there is could be probably some thought to that, Now, Mississippi is we have not taken advantage of this yet, but much of the Delta is already irrigated. The crops are out of the field. August, September, the crops are gone. They could plant a cover crop, irrigate it, and get it growing. And it wouldn't take but some low input electric fence, and we could improve the cattle business in the row crop area, by leaps and bounds. But the initial investment, I believe, keep farmers from doing that.
Well, maybe that's something that I think that's fascinating, but maybe that is something that USDA and RCS in particular will look at and think about the reimbursement costs for some of these practices. And as particular climate needs become more extreme,
Sure.
I think we may need other kinds of offsets for that.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, what do we not know about your farm?
Well, I think about that, and there's every day I'm thinking about the farm basically, and just to bring it full circle, I bought this place in an effort to fill an ambition that I had to raise livestock. But more so as an extension agent, I saw farmers educating their children through their farm. When I went to a particular farm, depending on the time of year it was, I saw a farmer and I saw his 5 or 6 or 7-year-old kid in the truck with him. That was attractive to me. It really was, because I didn't do it much, but that reminded me of when my dad and I were looking over the fence at the livestock, and he was, the hogs had personalities, and we would be, talking about the hogs and their personalities, so to speak. So that moved me in the extension arena to see that, and I always wanted that for my children. And the opportunity came to me. Now, like I said earlier, it was far-fetched in my mind. It was attractive. I saw it, but not wanting to assume a lot of debt. I didn't ever think it would become a reality. But when it did become a reality, that was my way of spending time with my children, spending time with my grandchildren, introducing them to agriculture, getting them to understand just life and death. Mm-hmm. Cattle are going to die eventually. You're going to lose some. And I think that helped me as a kid to be able to deal with this thing, death, that happens to people. Cattle are going to get sick. And if you're introduced to sicknesses and you understand that certain things happen to certain animals, then you realize that we're really animals ourselves. And so when you start putting all these pieces together, it sort of comes full circle. Now, relating that to the farm again is that I wanted to have something not just to leave my offspring, but something to educate my offspring in something different than football or basketball, or, things like that. Now they play, they do cheer and all these kind of things like that. But I did want to get them in a different arena than that. And so we started to do that, and then through the 4-H program, which I have not mentioned, is another avenue to introduce them to agriculture. So my whole position is education. If I can educate my children, if I can educate farmers. In fact, we're using a part of the front part of the farm this year in a demonstration for farmers to pass by and look at a bio-soil enhancer to see if it actually worked, if we can see visually the differences. And we're going to measure the hay, and we're going to have a treated area and an untreated right side by side on the highway so farmers can pass by and see it. So it's an education piece, information and education. And that was my first extension job. It was all about information and education. And that still is my passion, is to inform people and to educate people in any way necessary, whether it be, about Christ, or whether it be about the farm, whether it be about agriculture, or whether it be about just safe driving, just not polluting the roadsides, or whatever it is. I enjoy people, and I enjoy walking away from a person believing that I said something or did something to help them in some sort of way. So my farm is my platform to do these things. People stop by, farmers, I meet people, sometimes they're just buying hay. But in the hay buying conversation, we get a chance to talk about prescribed grazing, we get a chance to talk about fertility, we get a chance to talk about what time we need to cut the hay, we talk about weed control, we get a chance to talk about interseeding legumes, we get a chance to talk about practices that are on the place, we get a chance to talk about cattle drinking water, the fencing systems, the gates, the posts that we buy, just all different things, just casual conversations that farmers can gain from just understanding that this gate was bought at this place and it was cheaper than the gates that are at that place.
Right. Really pragmatic things.
So all of those
too.
things are practical and they help. And so that's what I do. That's what the farm allows me to do, is to interact with the community and to help people that stop by. And I enjoy that.
pragmatics is a way to open the conversation to philosophy and other things. Is there a way that people can get in touch with you if they'd like to?
Yes, I have a phone. I have email.
Would you like to give us your email?
Yeah, my email is simple: wjxn06@gmail.com.
All right, great, and we will put that here, so you should see that right now written down here as well.
Right, just email me. I enjoy visiting them, particularly about agriculture. That's my happy subject, and so I'm happy to talk about agriculture too. And I learn too. It's not just one way. I learn too. People do things in different ways. People buy feed from different places that I don't know about. So I have to sometimes go and check it out, so to speak. And so all of these things bring it full circle for me, learning. And it's all about information sharing, not just one way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, you shared a lot of information with me. I have learned a lot through our conversation today. I really appreciate it. You're being here, Mr. Jackson.
I'm enjoying it. Yeah,
thank you. You're a real inspiration. And I look forward to coming out and seeing your farm.
Yes. I'm happy for you guys to come out. Wish the grass was green and pretty at this time, but only the ryegrass fields are. But we can go and we can talk about what's out there, and we can dig some holes and plug around and get a feel for what we're trying to do on the land itself.
Great, and we will record that so everybody else will get a chance to see that too, up close and personal.
Good deal.
Excellent.
Good deal. Perfect.
Thank you for being here today.
All right. Enjoy it.
Okay.
Anytime.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.